Should be good to go.
Hello, everyone. Good afternoon. I want to welcome you to our Face It Youth Ambassador panel discussion. We want to thank Kosair Charities for their support around child abuse prevention, and particularly this month, we want to highlight our youth and young adult voice, and we want to talk about ways that our young people can be involved in preventing and supporting young people that have child abuse situations. So we're excited today to have a panel discussion and also to have a couple of people speak and give introductions in regards to this topic, because this is something that they really have a heart for and are the experts on. And so I want to introduce Mary Carpenter with the Department of Community-Based Services.
Good afternoon. My name is Mary Carpenter. I am the acting director of the Division of Protection and Permanency within the Department for Community-Based Services. DCBS serves a lot of families and children in many ways across the state, most notably through childcare, family support benefits, child and adult protective services. My division oversees the policy and programming side, and we're really excited to be a part of this conversation today. DCBS is really focused on building a 21st century DCBS. Hopefully, as we're coming out of this pandemic, and youth voice is really an important part of that. We have a trusted advisors group that includes young people who are helping us formulate a strategic plan. Kentucky was one of the first states to implement the Family First Prevention Services Act. So we're really committed to providing families more access to prevention services and keeping families safe together whenever possible. Often social workers are painted negatively by the public or the media. I myself was a frontline social worker for almost 11 years, but they're required to respond if a report is received, and just want to make sure that children are safe and families have resources. But child welfare is not just a DCBS priority. It starts with the communities. So again, I'm just really excited to be here today and excited to be a part of this. So thanks for having me. And then I think, Lindsay, I'm going to kick it to you.
Thanks, Nikki. Hi, my name is Lindsay Ware. I am the Senior Vice President of Strategy and Outreach for Kosair Charities. I'd like to tell you just really briefly for a minute about Kosair Charities. Our mission for nearly 100 years has been to enhance the health and well-being of all children in Kentucky and Southern Indiana. This was first in the 1920s through the 80s as the original Crippled Children's Hospital. And then since the 80s, we've been granting agency and providing financial support both directly to families and kids that need support, as well as to nonprofits across the state and Southern Indiana who are helping kids. One area that we help support is, of course, child abuse prevention. We founded the Face It movement in 2013 in response to the simply unacceptable instances of child abuse and neglect. Some of you may know, or some of you may not, that on a typical year, just last year, there are over 20,000 instances of child abuse and neglect in Kentucky. To put that in perspective, which you might hear some of this later, that could fill up our KFC Yum Center and then go beyond for those of you in Louisville. So I'm so thrilled that there are young leaders like the Face It Youth Ambassadors, because they're critical in this movement. The movement of Face It takes a three-pronged approach, including best practices in prevention and intervention, policy, making sure there's the right laws to back up this movement and help end child abuse and neglect, and then promoting best practices and community engagement. So things like we're doing here today for everybody online and watching on Facebook, that community engagement portion is so important. I really look forward to hearing from the youth ambassadors today. Thank you all for being online. And with that, it's my pleasure to turn it back over to Nikki.
Thank you, Lindsay, and thank you, Mary. So we are going to speak to our panel. We have youth and young adults with us today, and they're going to talk about why it's important for young people to be involved in child abuse prevention. So we are going to do introductions, and then if each of you could please give your reasons why you believe it's important for you to be involved with child abuse prevention. And we'll just go in the order of Felicity, Hunter, and Cynthia.
Hi, I'm Felicity. I'm 17. And I think it's important for young people to be involved because it's something that affects them. It affects their friends, it affects their family, and it affects them. So
All right, I'm Hunter Fackler. I'm a junior at South Oldham High School. To me, child abuse is something that needs to be addressed, kind of like what Lindsay said earlier. Child abuse should not happen. There should not be a single victim of child abuse. And I think it's something everyone can do to step up and be an advocate to try to end it. So I try to do my part, and because it's just unacceptable.
Hi, my name is Cynthia Shephers. I'm a 2019 undergrad from U of L. I'm also with the Face It Youth Ambassadors, as well as True Up with Nikki and the Youth Action Board. I think my role specifically is important because I have a lot of diverse experience to speak to, and throughout my advocacy have met many people and heard many stories. So I think that youth just have the most to offer because, you know, it's lived experience, it's not guesswork. So.
Thank you. And then could you help us better understand why you feel like it's important for your peers and your friends to also be involved in this work? Perhaps you speak with them about these issues, but what's the importance of other members of our community, young adults and youth, being involved in this work?
for me, it is, I see a lot of my friends and a lot of my peers just struggling with abuse or not even knowing that they're being abused. And I want us all to sort of be educated around abuse and around neglect and to sort of have a better understanding of how to help friends and how to help everybody around us.
I always look at it from a standpoint of a youth. I think if you're being abused as a child, you're going to feel a lot more comfortable to go to your peers than adults or people in a more bigger position than you are as a little kid. So I think it's important for youth to really be informed so that they have the tools to help their friends that are being abused, because their friends are probably going to be the ones to go to them first and share their experiences.
I think educating everyone is essential. I think often the child experiencing the abuse and the neglect has no idea what they're going through. So the more people we can educate on this, the more help that child has, the more eyes that are on that child to spot that abuse and neglect.
Thank you. And then with youth and young adults in different communities, what are some ways that you believe that they could help prevent child abuse and neglect? Maybe we have young people who are saying, I'm aware of some situations, but I'm not quite equipped to help. What would you say to those young people?
First off, I'd say just be a good friend to whoever you think might be hurting or might be in pain. And I always like to say this, and I know it can be hard in the moment, but never be afraid to ask for help. There's always somebody who's going to be a listening ear or a helping hand in any situation. And just educate yourself around what's going on and try to be there.
Again, with Felicity, the education I think is most important. It can be very intimidating and daunting when you're younger to try to reach out and learn about child abuse. But I think the more you inform yourself and are able to identify it, you're really going to be able to reach out and help your friends who might be struggling. So I would say understand child abuse and understand the process of getting help and how that help will be received.
I think a role that you could play as a peer or as a friend, definitely having that support role is essential, like Hunter and Felicity mentioned. But also, that is too much for a child to take on by themselves. It's important to reach out to counselors, teachers, the principal, whoever, your parents even. Don't let all that hang on your shoulders as a child or on your child's shoulders. Adults need to step in at a certain point as well.
Thank you. And then I also want to ask, what do you all think young people can do on a policy level? How can young people get involved and engage and advocate regarding policy?
With that one, there are so many ways you can get involved at a policy level. I mean, for me, I got involved through going to organizations like Face It or Kentucky Youth Advocates and just educating myself about what bills are currently happening, what bills might need to be changed or readjusted. I know that something that really helped me was through Face It, I believe. They have the blueprint policy thing. I don't know how to quite describe it, but they have that, and it's really educational, and it taught me a lot.
Again, jumping off the blueprint is a great way to start, but I think also realizing what tools you need and almost what you're missing out on. So I would take it the route of education. I personally feel like youth need to be equipped with more education and tools surrounding child abuse so they can get a better understanding and how to tackle it. So I would say advocate for more policies on education and making issues surrounding child abuse more common knowledge for youth in the Commonwealth.
I think what Hunter and Felicity said is so essential, but I think that it's important to note your own skill set that you have. Every youth comes with an individual skill set that can help in policy. And so using what you have and what your strengths are, is that, communicating with your peers, is that educating others, is that, telling your story to representatives. There's so many different ways that you can get involved. So just having the willingness and the desire is the first step, and then thinking about what strengths do you have and what direction can that send you in.
Thank you. And at this time, we want to give each of you an opportunity to share any final thoughts, anything you think that participants and young people should know as we close out the panel discussion.
Some final thoughts I have is just really emphasizing, first off, reaching out for help if you need it, and being a good friend and being there for the people that might be hurting, or just being there for anybody. And like Cynthia said, just the willingness to be open and to be willing to do whatever it takes.
Then again, jumping off of what Felicity and Cynthia said, speak up. Don't be afraid to be an advocate and to help. Because not helping, that's really going to harm the child's life, but you're also going to carry a lot of guilt and regret. And you're going to think about how much you could have helped that child. So I think in the moment, you need to not second guess yourself, go with your gut, and make sure you're an advocate, because you'll really regret not being an advocate.
I would say just to remember that it takes a village. We really need our entire community to be a part of this. So that's just my reminder for you guys, is that every single person who is listening to this has a role to play. It's just important that you get in contact with the right people and find out what that is and look within, even if you're just looking around for your kids' friends' signs of abuse and neglect. Everybody can do something. So I just want to encourage you guys to take a step in that direction.
Thank you. So now we're going to hear from Mary. She's going to share some additional ways that young people can get connected in their communities and also some support.
I just want to say, how impressed I am with our youth ambassadors. You all are just amazing, and wise beyond your years, I think. So just an amazing group of advocates. And I just think that we cannot underestimate the power of youth voice. And, just because you may be a young person, there are ways that you can get involved and advocate for others, share your story. Oftentimes, we make policies and develop programs, and the impact of your story, folks will never forget the way that makes them feel, so I just, that's just so important. But thinking about, what Cynthia said about it takes a village, and ways to get involved in your community. You might be able to speak to the Frisky, which is the Family Resource Youth Service Center. Those are in every county, maybe not every school. Most schools do have them though, but the director can help with connecting you with the advisory council. They often have youth representation, and their primary goal is to remove non-academic barriers to learning, which we know oftentimes can be child abuse. It can be other types of issues. So that's a way that you can get involved locally. Another agency which DCBS partners with closely is Kentucky Partnerships for Families and Children, or KPFC. That's an agency that encourages peer support and advocacy. KPFC supports Kentucky Youth Move. Their vision is that Kentucky will create a statewide network to help all youth entering a youth serving system to be able to reach their fullest potential, be empowered, persevere, and to be able to share their voice and be self-sufficient in life, living without stigma, if they are having barriers. So that's a great organization. It's a statewide organization, but they have many peer support groups and advocacy type ways to get involved, and a great organization. Another way to possibly get involved is through the regional interagency councils. Those are REACs. Those are statewide also. Those are in regions. Your local county may have a LEAC, which is a local interagency council, and they operate as the sort of point of contact for the system of care for behavioral health. And so they provide a structure bringing together community partners, a coordination of services, and they also promote youth engagement, typically transition age youth, ages 16 to 25. And they promote the system of care model, which is not really a model, I called it a model, but the system of care is more of a framework that supports sustainable change. So it's meant to be youth and family driven, community based, and trauma informed. And so the Department of Behavioral Health has a grant in which there are 4 cohorts. And this is sort of an extension of the REAC, in which they're also promoting youth involvement. And you basically have to have had child welfare involvement and have a behavioral health disorder. And so they're really looking for youth with sort of lived experience and working with that system and in order to inform practice and policy. And then finally, the Voices of the Commonwealth is a team of current and former foster youth advocating for the betterment of children and families involved in the child welfare system. And that's through Murray State University. It's actually a contract also through DCBS, but their lived experience really makes them experts on the unique issues that children in foster care face, or children who've often aged out of foster care. And they've really been instrumental in changing many policies and laws, and are a great advocacy group. So we just value their partnership so much. So those are a few ways. There may be other ways to get involved, but I just encourage you to reach out in your community and think about ways that you can really use your voice. And thank you again so much for having me here today.
Thank you, Mary. Appreciate that. And I want to thank Lindsay as well for joining us. As we conclude today's discussion with our Face It Youth Ambassador panel, I want to thank Felicity and Hunter and Cynthia for being bold and joining us today and sharing with young people and other community advocates around your thoughts around child abuse prevention and neglect. So thank you so much for making time and showing up boldly for this conversation. We also want to encourage everyone to go to the Face It website where you can learn more about child abuse and prevention, and also some tools will be available to help you within your advocacy. And then lastly, we want to leave you with the Child Protection Hotline number, and that number is 1-877-597-2331. Again, it's 1-877-597-2331. And as Cynthia said, we need everyone to be good advocates. We need everyone to speak up to prevent child abuse and neglect. Thank you for joining us this afternoon. Have a good rest of your day.